Are you a new parent and you are concerned about the comfort when traveling with an airline for your children at the age of 5? In today's video, I'm going to be going over all the pros and cons of airline upgrades and if it's something that you should do if you are a parent traveling with children under the age of 5. I'm a millennial mom with a 3-year-old, and now that we're all back outside, I will be taking my son on air travel as well. And so since I'm currently going through this situation, I want to discuss what we have decided to do. Let's get started. Now let's go into the advantages of upgrading your flight seating with your children. The first is comfort. I don't know about you, but the airline seats get smaller and smaller and smaller. And if you're traveling with small children, comfort is going to be key when it comes to traveling on an airline. Depending on what airline you take will also determine what upgrades you can have regarding comfort. That can be economy plus, first class, business class, because not all airlines offer that depending on your destination. So if you are looking for comfort, especially if your child is not going to be in the lap with you, so for children who are 3 and up, comfort might be the reason why you want to upgrade with your airline so that everyone in your row will be the most comfortable. The next is priority boarding. Now, this is kind of advantage or disadvantage depending on the age of your child. If you have small children, I would say under the age of 2, you might want to board last just because the longer they're on the aircraft, they can turn up. But if you have older children, it might be worth doing priority boarding because at least you get the family settled prior to other people getting on the airplane. You can get all their snacks, their toys, everything kind of set up before actually having to really make sure they're in their seats prior to departing. And because you're boarding first, you know that you have that extra time you need just in case you want to drop something, or you and your partner or family member or friend need to swap seats while everyone is boarding so that one person can be with this set of children and the other person can be with this set of children. Priority boarding might be an option for you and your family if that is something you're really concerned about with your small children. Let's not forget about the in-flight services. So if you are going to upgrade, then you already know that the more you pay for that ticket price, the more you're going to be able to get for that flight. This can include meals in your duration of your flight. If you're in first class or business class, being able to get like headphones, blankets, pillows, just additional attention that you might need, especially if you just had a baby, or if this is your first time traveling with just you and your baby. Having that better in-flight service with the flight attendants might be a plus for you. Also, the closer you are to first class, you have better access to the bathrooms and just any amenities that might be offered for people who paid a higher ticket price. That's definitely something that you want to look into if you are traveling with small children, because even though you might bring snacks, they might see something they might want. And also being able to have something on the flight, depending on the duration, might also be an advantage too, in case you run a little late, you almost missed your flight, and you just need something to kind of take the edge off while you're getting to your destination. The reduced stress. When you have paid for priority boarding first class, you already know you're going to get access to the best or top of the line access to lounges, airport seating, food. A lot of things like priority boarding includes like food options. You get access to the lounge depending on your destination, depending on your airline. So if that is something that's really, really important to you and to just have a more relaxed experience when traveling, it might be worth just paying the extra money to get those in-flight services. I understand that sometimes you might just be flying like a couple of hours, but you will know the difference between someone who was able to get the upgrades while they are in flight versus a family who is like stuck in the back and everything is going straight to Hades. If you want to reduce the stress on the front end so that while you're in flight to your destination, it's going to be more relaxing on the back end, paying the higher price for more amenities for your small children might be a great advantage for you to look into. I previously mentioned this before, we're going to mention it again, access to airport lounges. If you are going through some of the major airports like LAX, so Chicago O'Hare, Newark International Airport, even with JFK, you're gonna get access to some of the best lounges in the country. And if you want food included, drinks included, better seating, being able to reduce the stress, getting that priority access to those lounges might be what will save you from having to take a shot of tequila versus drinking a glass of wine. So that's something you really wanna look into. Not all airports have as luxury of lounges as the airports that I mentioned. Those are just some of the bigger airports that will have like your Delta. For example, if you're going to Atlanta, Delta will have like the premier lounge. If you're going to Newark or Chicago O'Hare, then United would kind of be the place where you know they're going to have top tier lounges. So that's just an example of, depending on where you're leaving from, those lounges might be worth the investment. If you're coming from a smaller airport or something like Philadelphia, you know, like it's a little yang, it might not be worth getting it, depending on how long you're going to be at the airport, how long the duration of your flight is. But it's definitely something to look into, especially if you want something more of an all-inclusive experience. Lounges usually will include drinks and food. It might not be like your Burger King or McDonald's, but it's definitely going to be healthy options to kind of get you on your way to your flight and your destination. Now, if you are confused about how to even start the process of traveling with your child, do not worry. I have a free checklist that you want to grab. I will list it in the description box below. It's a travel checklist for children and toddlers, mainly focused on children under the age of 2, all the things that you're really going to need. Even though COVID is no longer a thing, it has all the information in there that you will probably want to still know about with COVID and other restrictions when it comes to flying with small children under the age of 2. I will again include that in the description box below. It's a quick, easy checklist that you can print off right at home and make sure that you have all these items before traveling with your small children. Now let's get on to the cons of these upgrades with these airlines when traveling with small children under the age of 5. So I guess the major disadvantage with all of this is going to be cost. When it comes to flying, first of all, it is expensive, especially if you're flying from the East Coast to the West Coast. You're going to be paying close to $1,000 for these tickets per person. So to add on top of these upgrades might be too much for your pocket. But trust me, I know cost could be one of the determining factors on whether or not this is something you want to do. Also, where you're leaving from. Again, if you're leaving from like a Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, you also want to consider that before paying for upgrade, because cost is really going to be a huge factor. It can make the difference between making a $500 ticket to a $2,000 ticket. And if that's not something in your budget, if you're traveling with small children who are not going to be able to be in your lap, because keep in mind, children over 3 are half price of a regular ticket. Children who are 0 to 2 can be considered lapsed, so they're only paying the taxes and the fees. So that's another thing to keep in mind too when it comes to cost, that you might want to upgrade everybody. But if you have a 3-year-old to 12-year-old, they're going to be half the cost of your ticket. So if your ticket is $500, that child is going to be $250 plus tax based on your destination and your airline. So cost is definitely going to be a factor on whether or not it's something you can even do for you and your family. Next is going to be the limited availability. Like, you might want to upgrade, but you might have waited too late to decide that this is something you want to do, and it is not available. Not all destinations, not all aircrafts, not all airlines, it's just not. You might not be able to get it to where you want it to go or the airline that you're choosing. So that might be another disadvantage if it's something that you want to do. You might want to take Delta, but Delta doesn't have any direct flights to your destination. So then you're not able to take advantage of getting an upgrade anyway. So just make sure you're looking at all those things before upgrading with children for your flights. Unpredictable behavior. Children will children. Small children will small children. Generation Alpha is out here, okay? These pandemic children are pandemic toddlers. They're pandemic preschoolers, okay? And they are out here in these streets just like us. Sometimes you pay for these upgrades and they cry the entire time, where you're gonna have to leave the lounge, where you can't even board early, or you have to board super early, or they don't sit in their seat. You're getting yelled at by the flight attendant. You're getting yelled at by the flight. I get it. There's all these different circumstances that will make even trying to upgrade impossible. So if you know that your child's temperament is not like pretty even, which, let's face it, children under 5, they are so unpredictable. I mean, the terrible 2s have now become the terrible 3s. Ask me how I know. But if this is something that you are considering, just make sure you have a general idea of your child's temperament, because you don't want to spend an extra $600 for these tickets and you can't even sit in the lounge because your child is acting out. They will kick you out lounges if you are having crazy behavior. If your children is out here acting crazy in these streets, they do have the right to kick you out even though you've paid for lounges or upgraded access. So that's just another thing to keep in mind if that is something you're concerned about. If you know your children have more like manageable behavior, cool. But if you feel like it's gonna be a point where you're gonna have to like yank them or, you know, then you might not wanna do it. Higher expectations. Let's face it, when you're paying your coins, when you're paying more coins, you expect top tier service. And keep in mind, as I've mentioned, depending on the hub that you're leaving from and where you're going, the services will vary between state to state, airport to airport, destination to destination. So you might get fantabulous access to a lounge in Atlanta, but then when you go to Seattle, Washington, it is not the same. But you're like, I paid for access for same airports, it should be the same thing, and it's not. And then you feel like you got gypped because you paid all this money at Atlanta, but then you get to Seattle and it's not giving what the girls thought it was going to give. And that's completely understandable. So just another thing to keep in mind too, that depending on where you're going, if you're going out of the country, you know, you might leave from Atlanta with Delta and then you go to Jamaica and realize that the lounge is not giving what the lounge gives in the States because you're in a different country. So even though you'll have the higher expectations, being able to try to manage them based on your destination might be hard to do because the upgrades do cost money. And even though they might vary slightly in price, you're still paying for premium services. So you are going to expect that if you're paying an extra $400 to have, you know, first class seating and premier access boarding that's right under TSA pre-check, you're gonna want those similar services, which is understandable, but it might not be realistic depending on your destination, the airline, and where you're leaving from. The next thing to consider when it comes to traveling with small children and the cons of doing premium upgrades would be disturbing other passengers. I'm sure you saw recently when a rapper made a comment about another rapper's grandchildren and how that didn't fare very well for them. If you're paying for premium services like first class and you have small children are not going to sit in their seat. So there's a high propensity that other passengers will be disturbed by your small children, and that may be annoying to some people. Even though it's public transportation, some people still might be annoyed that you are disturbing their peace, but that also comes with the risk of upgrading when you have small children. So just keep that in mind, that if you're in first class, you might be put next to a businessman or businesswoman who is like, this kid is team too rowdy and I just wanted to have kumbaya and drink my scotch, and your child is over here playing The Floor is Lava. Okay, it's not something you can control. It's something to be mindful of. Again, it goes back to the behavior. Kids are going to be kids, and if you're taking like a flight from New York to LA, I don't know if your children are like 3 to 5, if it's something that you should be doing, because they will pretend that the floor cabin is lava and they'll crawl over the place, and you never know. You might have some cool flight attendants who will be like, you know, the floor is lava. And then you might have some that are like more strict and it's like, you gotta control your children. So that's just, again, one of the risks that you're gonna take if you're going to do upgraded services for your airline. Now, as far as my personal opinion about what you should do, I think it really depends on how long your flight is going to be. I did mention our family and I were taking a vacation, and so our flight is going to be under 4 hours. So I think as long as your flight is under 4 hours, having upgraded services, I don't think would be too much of an issue. I definitely wouldn't do first class with my 3-year-old. I would probably wait until he's over like 7 to do something like that, just because he's in that the floor is lava stage, and to have him doing that on the aircraft might be team too much. But if you feel like, you know, that's not gonna be a big deal for you, then have at it, sis. I do think having access to lounges or being able to go through TSA faster is important, especially if you're coming from major hubs and you're going to another major hub. Being able to try and expedite that process as much as possible might be ideal. If you're going to be traveling around prime times like 4th of July, Labor Day, it might help, but you also just want to make sure you're getting there as early as possible to mitigate being left on your flight if you didn't buy any insurance. So if it's me, yes. As long as the flight's under 4 hours and you're going to something like in the continental US, it might be worth getting upgrades. But if you are going to go out of the country or go for longer destinations, if you know your child's temperament, you'll have to base it on that. That would be my opinion. Ultimately, it's up to you and your family to decide what is going to be best for you, whether you think airline upgrades are great or if you're going to hold off until your children are a little older. If you are looking for an activity or something for them to do while they're on the flight and it's educational, you should check out this video here where I have the top shows for children to watch while they're on the airplane, and you'll definitely have this come in handy while you are at the airport, on the tarmac, up in the air, or landing at your final destination.